book of Acts records the birth and expansion of the church. Jesus had died and resurrected and ascended into heaven. Now what? What are the followers of Jesus supposed to do without Jesus physically present with them? They are entering uncharted territory. We read in the book of Acts about this fledgling community of believers receiving and learning to follow the Holy Spirit. We said that the book of Acts could be rightly called the Acts of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit plays a prominent role start to finish. In Acts chapter 2, the Holy Spirit makes his entrance in a really dramatic way. The disciples were doing what Jesus told them to do: wait. Jesus said, "Do not leave the city, but wait for the gift my Father promised. In a few days, you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit." So they waited. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days later, they were all gathered in one place. Maybe they were celebrating the Jewish festival, the Feast of Weeks, also called Pentecost, but this day would become so much more. Take a look. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. What was going on? They heard a sound like the blowing of a violent wind. The Holy Spirit is often described as a wind. In fact, it's the same word. The word for spirit in both the Old and New Testaments is the word for wind. The Hebrew word ruah, used in the Old Testament, and the Greek word pneuma, used in the New Testament, both mean wind. There's something about the wind. It's power, and yet it's mystery. It is this tremendous force, and you can feel it, and you can know it, but you can't control it or order it around. That suggests spirit. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire, like little flames like you see in your fireplace that separated and came to rest on or maybe above each of them. It's hard to imagine. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues, in other languages that they had not studied and did not previously know. They must have been freaking out. Sometimes the Holy Spirit comes like a gentle breeze, like a whisper. This was not one of those times. On this day, the Spirit came more like a tornado. There were people from all over the world in Jerusalem that day, and hearing the commotion, they went to see what was going on. Then they were blown away when they each heard in their own native language being spoken by these Galileans. How could this be? What does all this mean? Some said it must be God. Some said it must be alcohol. I think these guys must be drinking. Peter saw the crowd, recognized the opportunity, and stepped up to give a sermon. As far as we know, this was Peter's first sermon. He begins with defending their actions. He said, "These people are not drunk, as you suppose. It's only 9 in the morning." That was his defense. It's only 9 in the morning. If we're 4 in the afternoon, well then, yeah, maybe. Personally, I think Peter's sermon is off to a weak start. But then he gets fired up. He quotes the prophets. He calls people to commitment. And 3,000 people say, "We want to follow Jesus too. We want to be part of this movement." Not bad for his first sermon. This dramatic day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit was given in a new way, is often considered the birth of the church. When I was a kid, my Sunday school teacher would bring a birthday cake to class on Pentecost Sunday. We would all sing "Happy Birthday" to the church. Her methods were unusual. Her baking was average. But I will never forget that the church was born at Pentecost, and the gift was the Holy Spirit. The book of Acts records how the Holy Spirit energized and animated a disheveled, ragtag band of volunteers into an unstoppable force for good that would turn the world upside down. It started slowly. This baby church had to grow and find her strength. From this point forward, the growing community of Jesus followers will learn how to organize themselves for mission, how to love each other when they disagree, how to keep fear in check when facing persecution, how to navigate ethnic and cultural differences, and chiefly, how to discern and follow the Holy Spirit. And I'm praying that we will rediscover these things too. Thanks for joining us.